giving them just a couple of minutes to tell a little bit more about themselves. I didn't want to spend a whole lot of time reading their bios or that kind of stuff, because I want us to really jump in and learn from them. So first I'm going to ask Matt Cleveland to come off of mute. Matt is currently at the Director of Development at the Youth Ranches, and Cersei, and been a long-standing AFP member. So Matt, just tell the group about yourself.
Jennifer, thanks for having me. Yeah, I'm the Chief Development Officer at the Arkansas Sheriff's Youth Ranches. We're actually located in Batesville. I live in Cersei, work out of Batesville. I'm in Little Rock quite a bit too. So, but I've been in fundraising for, I guess, going on 17 years now, and I've been at the ranch for about 8.5 of those. So, but I live in Cersei with my wife Kim and our 2 kids. We've got or 3 kids. Sorry, I'm still new to the 3rd kid thing, I guess. Allison is 15, Dylan is 12, and Ellie is 1. So, yeah, I've been here for 8.5 years. I have acquired my CFRE, and anything else you want to know?
Yeah, so that's great information, Matt. Thank you. Kind of get to know you more in this next hour. Up next, our second panel member is Debbie Grooms, and she is the Director of Development at AEDD. So Debbie, take it away.
Well, good afternoon or morning. Well, it's afternoon now to everybody. And I am Debbie Grooms. I'm the Development Director for AEDD. And that is where we have our meetings when we can have them in person again. They're at our multipurpose center. So most of you have probably visited that before, I imagine. And glad to be here today to, I don't know that I'm an expert. He calls me an expert. I don't know about that. But I will give you whatever knowledge I have, I hope to share with you. I've been at AEDD for 13 years, which is unbelievable. I can't believe it's been that long. And that's the only place I've ever worked in development and fundraising. So the rest of it was all volunteer service for probably 30 years, and which kind of gives you both sides of the coin when you are volunteering and then when you're leading. So it's kind of good experience, but I'm happy to be here and answer questions and share my knowledge with you today. And I appreciate being asked. That was very, very sweet of Jennifer. Oh, and I did serve as AFP president 2 years. So I have a little bit of knowledge on that side as well. Probably not as much as Karina, who's on this call, but I do have a little bit. So that's pretty much me.
Thank you so much. And our third panel member is Brenda Mauldin. And Brenda, I see you now. Sorry, so Brenda, I leave it to you.
Thanks, Jennifer. Hello, everybody. I'm happy to be here. I kind of feel like the oldest person in the room, and I'm pretty sure I am. I've been in fundraising for 32 years now. Started when I was 12. And for 23 of those years, I worked for organizations and as the Chief Development Officer, and then a few years as a foundation exec. So 9 years ago, I went out on my own, primarily just for some more flexibility. I enjoy fundraising. I still enjoy bringing people and resources together. With my consulting business, I focus on strategic planning, campaign planning, board development, and then a lot of grant writing and research. So I enjoy it. I enjoy working with a variety of organizations, and I've been a member of AFP since 1991, and like Debbie, served as president for 2 years. So anyway, happy to be here, and thanks for the invite.
Y'all can see that we really do have 3 outstanding successful fundraising as fundraisers as panelists today. And Caitlin, if you don't mind helping look at the chat, since I am not as familiar with this, what I'm doing right now. But as I jumped on late, I know that we all have, 8 balls in the air at the same time. So I just kind of want to talk to the panelists real quick about how you manage your time and advice on how you manage your time. And that can go in any direction that you want to with that question. But I think a lot of us in this field, we always feel like we need to be doing something, but how do we really prioritize that? So first up, just on advice on managing our time, Brenda, what do you think about that?
I think time management is probably one of the most important areas that you can get your arms around, truly. Um, if you don't manage your time, somebody else will. I learned that the hard way. And well-meaning bosses, even board members and your staff, um, they truly do mean well, but they will suck your time away from you. And I think it's really important that you figure out a way that works best for you to be graceful, but to be able to let them know where your priorities are. You've got to be able to schedule time to do your work, because if you don't, number one, nobody else is going to do it for you, and you're accountable for the monies to be raised. And you get pulled in so many different directions. I know that. And as a development person, you're trusted. You're probably in upper management. People want your feedback, and that's wonderful, and you want to be part of the team. But at the same time, you've really got to develop some professional protocols so that you can shut your door and you can work on raising money. You just have to figure out how to make that happen that's comfortable for you.
May I also say something?
Yes.
Yeah.
I also think that the people who contribute to whether they investing in you or your organization, that if you don't seem to have time management, then they're going to lack confidence in working with you or your mission for that matter. So it's best to make sure that whoever's at the top of the chain, they're aware, but not necessarily be like attached to the hip, but make them aware that you are attentive, you will make yourself available if both of your schedules allow to have a meeting of the minds for that matter. That's been successful for me.
Michelle, thank you so much for sharing. We appreciate that so much. And so, Matt, tell us about some of your advice on time management and what we can learn.
Sure. I kind of have a two-pronged piece of advice. One of them is don't overschedule your day so that you have back-to-back meetings and you're always rushing from one thing to another. I found, especially even in this last year, where our time has just been sort of at a standstill, it seems like, but also going quick in some other ways. But this year, just cutting things off of my schedule has been kind of a blessing because I've been able to spend some more time doing things that I wouldn't normally do in my day-to-day. When you have a little bit extra margin, that kind of frees up some space for you to be a little bit more creative, to think a little bit, maybe give a few more minutes of thought to something before you send it out. And I guess the other prong of that advice is to show up to meetings early. We want to be respectful of other people's time and show them that they're valuable. But like I said earlier, I live in Searcy and I work sort of out of Batesville and Little Rock, so I never know what I'm going to get behind on the highway. So when I'm going to a meeting, so I always leave. I try to leave like an hour, 30 minutes early, just so hopefully if I am behind something, that there's a wreck or a delay, that I'm at least there on time. But I've found that in doing that, it gives me some time to spend with people before the meeting. And sometimes those interactions with people before the official meeting can be even more valuable than what I get out of the meeting. So you can kind of come and they're a little bit more personal and open up a little bit more about their personal life. You learn things about them that you wouldn't learn otherwise. But that's kind of my take on managing time. But let's see, I think I had something else in my notes. Yeah, that's all I got for this one. Thanks.
Yeah, Matt, thank you so much. And that's what I cannot wait till we're back together again. I love Zoom so we can still maintain a connection, but just like you said, Matt, it's that, getting there early and chatting with people before and after that you do learn so much more about each other in that. So I agree with you. and Debbie. So if you can come off mute and tell us a little bit about advice on managing our time.
Well, I will tell you what I have found over the years. I'm a list maker. I always have a list. I don't care if I'm going to the grocery store or if it's tasks that need to be done at home. It might be I have short lists and long lists. So I have short lists of what do I need to get done today? What do I need to get done this week? What do I need to get done by the end of the month? What do I see in 6 months? I mean, it may even go up to 6 months long, but I have a long-term task list, short-term. And to me, that's my lifesaver, because it is so much fun when you can check off what you've done, and you realize you are accomplishing something and you know what you have in store coming up. And I've found that to be my best way to manage my time, because, Brenda was right. And I have found, not being at the office all of the time, this flexibility we have now to work at home, I get a little bit more done, because when you are at the office and you're around other people, they do pull you away. Oh, they'll come visit in your office for a few minutes, or let's go to lunch, or, they'll come in and ask questions, then it evolves into another conversation. So, and you look up and you've lost an hour of your day. So I have found that working at home, if I have a very tedious task I need to work on that I know is going to take some time, I do better with that when I'm at home by myself. We also have task list for what we have going on at our office. So we have our department task list, which is a general task list of everything. I have my task on there, Karina's task are on there, Christy, our event coordinator. Yep, Karina's holding it up. So that task gets updated every week. And we know some of those are longer term tasks. Some need to be done within the week. There's a date of when something needs to be finalized. And we'll be glad to share it's a very simple little spreadsheet, but we'll be glad to share it to anybody that wants it. So we have that for our general department. And then we also have that same type of task list for each of our events. So it may be something for an event that's coming up in October, but there's things that need to be done now. So we have the same exact thing, and we have it broken down by committees as well for each of those events. So if a committee is working on decorations, let's say, or something, they have all their tasks listed and when they need to be completed. And I have found that to be, it's useful for us and it's useful for our volunteers, because we have such a huge volunteer base that if you're working with volunteers, if you can give them a list like that, they'll do better, because they know what they need to do and they know when they need to have it done. So I think that's my biggest thing with managing my time, is just keeping a list and sticking to it and making sure you're doing the most important things first.
Debbie, thank you so much. I have two follow-ups for that. Who actually creates the task list?
I create the one for our department. Okay. I'll call Karina and say, what have we talked about? What do you have coming up? Can you think of anything? And then I'll talk to Christy, and then I compile the list. And then I go through the next week and I check off everything we've gotten done, keep things that haven't been done, add new things in. So I do that. And then we pretty much all collaborate on the event list, but it's, our events are kind of the same every year, so we tweak that a little bit, but it pretty much stays the same every year, unless we're doing a little bit of different things. This year we've had to update it quite a bit. Yeah. But that's what it is. It's kind of a joint effort for that.
Right. And if you could share that with us, I know that we would all just love to see that, because y'all are so streamlined.
Yeah, Karina's got her computer up. I'm on my other computer, but she's got hers up. She can probably share it with you.
Perfect. And then Debbie, also, so you just kind of mentioned working with volunteers. So we all know in development and fundraising that we work with a wide variety of people, from volunteers to our major donors to fellow employees. So what we just want to talk about a minute is how we manage all these kind of different relationships in a given day. So we kind of talked about how we manage our time, but how we manage the different kind of relationships. So Matt, I'm going to go to you with this one. So how do you figure that
out? For me, when it comes to managing relationships, whether it's a volunteer, board member, donor, staff, prospect, or even like one of your vendors that you work with, I do a couple things, but first and foremost, I always treat them like I would want to be treated. And I want to do everything I can to respect their time, and show them that I value their perspective and what they bring to the table, whether it's their guidance on an issue, their voice, their resources of time, talent, treasure, whatever they're bringing. I want to make sure that I'm stewarding them like I would want to be stewarded. But and I may have ideas about what I want from that relationship, but I also want to come to that relationship and the knowledge and the reality that they have a lot more to offer than anything that I could imagine. So I only know, a small sliver about what they're bringing to the table, about their ability or their affinity towards our organization, or even their history. So all those are super powerful things. So I always try to take sort of I guess an improvisational approach to relationships. If you're familiar with improv, you're probably familiar with the phrase "yes and." And the goal of improv is to try to keep that conversation alive and keep the act going, by adding to the conversation rather than like cutting it off. With anything negative, like, we've never done it that way before, that's a great idea. But so you want to continue that conversation with a yes and I think, that could be a powerful tool for us to use in fundraising, because it's just incredibly powerful to figure out how far you can take a relationship by granting permission to be, I guess, to be creative and to just dream a little bit with you. As fundraisers, we're kind of like conduits of our donors and our volunteers' dreams, connecting them to our efforts as fundraisers with our organization. So I think once you've got a lot of that information, then you can sort of take that information to your board or your staff, or use your skills strategically to figure out how to best organize that. But just figuring out what you can get by not cutting off that creativity, I think, can be really powerful for fundraisers.
Yeah, I love that analogy to improv. That's great. Just to always try to keep the conversation going. So Debbie, what about you? What do you think about managing all the different types of relationships?
I'm going to talk about two specific ones because we do have such a large group of volunteers. We have, I think, 70 members now in our auxiliary, and some of them have been with us. They're charter members, so they've been with us 12 years because we started the first year after we started our department, and they've stuck with us all this time. So that says something about maybe we're doing things right, because they are hanging in there with us for a very long time. I think you have to show appreciation to your volunteers. And I think if you ask anyone that's on our auxiliary, they're going to tell you we give them a lot. We have a meeting with them every month. We feed them lunch. Even during COVID, we had Zoom meetings. We had lunch delivered to their house. So that makes them know that we appreciate them. We're not just saying it, we're showing it. And I think that's the difference there, because you cannot take your volunteers for granted. You have to show them and thank them over and over and over. And we do that all of the time. So that's on the volunteer side. And I think being a volunteer for so many years kind of made me very aware of that, because no matter what you're doing, I mean, we volunteer for AFP, in various ways. You like to be appreciated and thanked, because it does take a lot of your time to do it. So that, and then the other one is your donors. And I know you all know this, your AFP members, so you've probably heard it over and over and over, but don't call your donors just to ask for money. Call them to thank them, take them for coffee. Don't ask them for anything, just take them for coffee. Write them a handwritten note. Don't send them an email, write them a handwritten note, pick up the phone and call. I really have found sometimes handwritten notes even mean more to a donor than a phone call. We'll never forget the first year that we did our curtain call event at our Jenna Community Theater. Vincent Insulaco puts that program together for us every year. So we had a board meeting, and I had my CEO send a thank you card around to all of the board members and had them sign it. And then we sent one around to all of the auxiliary members and they all signed it. And we sent both of those cards to Vince and thanking him. And he called me and he said, do you know, all of the things that I volunteered to do, I've never gotten a handwritten thank you. And that just blew me away. I thought, how can that even be? But people are not in the mindset much anymore to do handwritten thank yous. And I do them all the time. So I think something like that makes a difference right in the middle of COVID. We didn't have any events. We had sponsors who had paid a lot of money up front that weren't going to get anything for their sponsorship. And so they did not ask for their money back. They were just happy to make it a charitable contribution. But we sent a box. We had specially made boxes, and we put all these goodies in these boxes and sent them out to 60 or 70 people. And we got so many wonderful thanks and replies about those boxes. And it just meant something that we were thinking about them in the middle of all this and still appreciated them. So I think that's my main thing I would say take away from this is just make sure you always thank your donors other than the times that you're asking for money, and do things for them in other ways. And I'm sure you all know that, but I've just found that to be very helpful. And I think donors, it does make a difference with them for sure.
May I add on to that?
Of course.
When you thank your donors in a more personalized or custom way, that will give them an incentive to want to help you again, because you've taken the time out to do that handwritten note, maybe that special package, or just spending out some time just to get to know them, not talk about business. I think that is such I'm trying to choose my words wisely. I think that's such a great approach to maintaining that relationship. Not just calling when it's time to ask to support my fundraiser when you haven't talked to them all year round. But it's time to fundraise and you're going to ask them. I think the relationship has to be ongoing throughout the year. And because COVID has impacted last year and we're still dealing with the effects of that, we may have to do a little bit more because their business or their organization may have some challenges. So we want to help them so that they can help us and build that bridge together.
Yeah, and that's a key to relationships too, is going both ways, Michelle. So thank you so much for sharing that. And I wanted to give a big shout out to Stacey Robinson, who's on this call too. She is amazing at handwritten notes and everything she does at Aurora. So Stacey, you have been recognized for that. So Brenda, tell us about you, because I know in it's a little bit different because you're writing grants. So you're talking to grantors and grantees, and then you're talking, you teach classes on all this stuff as well. So you're a teacher. So kind of give us your input on how to manage all the different types of relationships.
Sure, and I'd like to echo what Matt and Debbie said, and Michelle as well. All of the things that they've mentioned, I think we all try to incorporate. But I think it's important, in order to do all that, you've got to figure out a way to schedule those moves into your schedule. You can't just wait for an opportunity to cross your path to talk to a donor or a volunteer to build those relationships. I think you have to be very intentional. I know a lot of us live based on metrics, and I think metrics can help you with those relationship touches. If you'll establish how many touches you need to make on a weekly basis or even a monthly basis, that helps you push forward and actually reach out and touch people. I have found that if I didn't do that, other things get in the way, and you can easily just push things like phone calls and visits and short personal meetings. Remember when we used to meet over coffee with our donors and volunteers, and that will return someday. I just know it. But it's easy to push those things aside when you're pushing a campaign and you're working on deadlines. So I would encourage you to incorporate metrics to make sure you're not only building your relationships, but you're maintaining those relationships. As far as my world now, I spend a lot of time with my clients making sure that they're comfortable with what we're doing. I never want them to feel like that I've left them in left field. I've left them uninformed or out there on their own. So I spend a lot of time taking care of my clients just like they were a major donor when I was working for organizations. And working with different groups that asked me to come and teach a workshop, I deal with them just like I did major donors. These are folks who help me, and I want to help them be successful by providing a service. So I think the whole relationship component is key. I think it's one of the top skills within our profession that you just have to master in order to be successful.
Brenda, thank you so much. And you just kind of like took that back to time management too. So, schedule in those relationship touch points. That's great how those two kind of went together.
I want to add one more thing if I can, Jennifer. I looked down at my notes. Be genuine. Be genuine in your relationships. And I think it is so important. You love your organization or we wouldn't be doing what we do. Share the love, share the passion, but allow folks to share theirs back with you. Just be genuine. They know if you're fake. And I think it goes a long way if you are.
Thank you so much, Brenda. Being authentic, being your authentic self is just going to be better for us as professionals and as personal human beings. So, but we're all on here. We're all AFP members. And so we care about our profession. We care about what we do. We care about organizations, or otherwise we would not spend time with AFP or we would not be here. So I just kind of want to briefly touch on the importance of professional development and what that means to y'all and what y'all have done to make sure that you get your professional development in. Brenda, I'm just going to go back to you right there. So talk about the importance of professional development to you and your career.
Well, something that AFP helped me do from the get-go a long time ago, and that was when listening to chapter programs, I quickly found out where I needed help. So I think it's important to recognize your strengths and your weaknesses and then pursue areas to help you grow in those areas where you're not as confident and you're not as knowledgeable. And I'll say this, the more, I think you have to be really open as well with your trainings. Don't go in with the mindset that you don't want to be here, that you've got everything else to do. I think your attitude and approach to professional development helps you get the most out of it, quite honestly. So just be open with yourself and know where your areas are that you need help, and don't be shy about asking for help and pursuing it. Of course, do pursue the programs through AFP, and I found over the years that other state chapters of AFP have fabulous programs as well. I've gone to different AFP programs that were in areas where I needed help. I've been, to Dallas, I've been to St. Louis, I've been to New Orleans for AFP training. And it's not only great to get out of your comfort zone, but it's great to hear what other people are doing. So make sure that hopefully there's professional development in your budget. And if you're a department head, make sure you've got professional development in that budget and share it with your staff. And just be the leader and get the training on an annual basis. I think it is so very important. We all can't know everything there is.
And Brenda, thank you so much. That's why I love our AFP education sessions, because you're going to walk away learning something. And so it's just so important. And so just attending is more than half of the battle there in the sessions. So Matt, what about you? The importance of professional development in your career?
Yeah, I think one thing Brenda just said a second ago is sharing that that with your staff. I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for somebody else that's on this call, Fran Carter. She was my first boss at Youth Home when I started fundraising back in 2004. And one of the first things she did was tell me to go to an AFP meeting. And she encouraged me not only to just go to those meetings, but I think they were like looking for somebody to help with the National Philanthropy Day Committee at that first meeting that I went to. And I was interested in marketing and that kind of thing. So they were looking for some help with the marketing of Philanthropy Day that year. So I got involved on a committee that year. And, you know, being involved and actually doing more than just going to education sessions, I think is really important for engaging professionals. But again, sharing that with your staff, encouraging your staff that work with you to also participate is hugely important, because you know, iron sharpens iron. The more you learn, the more the people that are around you learn. Our profession is just going to grow and strengthen, and we'll be better fundraisers and better people because of it. But and I also more than just the education sessions, just the connections that you make, the people that are in AFP are a great resource too, because you know, we can't learn everything there is to learn about every topic. It's hard to be a jack of all trades, but some people are very adept at certain aspects of the fundraising profession. So if you need help with a planned gift that you've never dealt with before, you've got a whole host of people that you can kind of fall back on and say, hey, I'm doing something I've never done before, and can you help me talk through it? So just the membership of AFP, I think, is really important too. And another thing, AFP is a good resource for preparing for a CFRE. The CFRE is the certification, Certified Fundraising Executive. So it's our professional certification for the profession. I obtained my CFRE in 2017, and it's been great just kind of having that or anything like that, but it is, I think it has lends some credibility to what we do. So if you have questions about that, I'm sure there's somebody that we can point you to that's preparing people to take the CFRE this year. So but that's another thing that you can do in developing yourself as a professional fundraiser.
Matt, thank you so much. And again, it's kind of where y'all are going back to the relationships, not just relationships with our donors and our volunteers, but relationship with each other. I don't know how many times I've called people on the screen and other members to say, what do you do for this? And what do you do for that? So thank you for sharing that as well. Debbie, what about you? You know, you kind of came into this as a volunteer, and then you have risen to the top of AEDD. So tell us about your professional development.
Well, you're right, because our CEO has been a longtime friend of mine who called me to come to work at AEDD, and I had no experience as a professional fundraiser or development department person. I did it, you know, like I said, as a volunteer, but that was it. And they didn't have anything. They had no development department, no events, no volunteers, nothing. So we built it all from the ground up in the past 13 years. Without AFP, I don't know where I would be. I think that's why I'm such a big advocate for AFP, and just jumped in with both feet and started volunteering right off the bat and got on a committee. And I don't know, I've served on pretty much, I think, every committee AFP's had. And that's the way to do it, because you learn about AFP as an organization, you learn about fundraising and the ethics and what's involved in what other people do and how to do it right and how to do what you're doing better. That, you know, and it's something that I think meeting with people every month who do what you do, if you do have a problem or a question, it gives you the opportunity to meet with those people and ask questions and call them on the phone. And our mentor program is wonderful because it will match you with someone who can, you know, help you, and you gain information from that person as well. I don't care how long you've been in fundraising. You're going to always learn something from someone, no matter how long they've been in fundraising. So it's a two-way street. And I also think that if you're going to stay in fundraising for a long time, then getting your CFRE, like Matt said, is probably very important. I did not do that because I'm an old person. I've probably going to, retire in a few years. And it wasn't something that was on my radar at the time that I joined AFP. So I didn't go that route. But I think if you're going to, it's a good thing to have, because if you're applying for a job somewhere and there's 3 or 4 people and you have your CFRE, it's probably going to put you at the top of the list for a callback. So I would highly recommend that if you're going to stay in this business. But other than that, really, it's just connecting with people, getting advice. If there's any learning you can do, well, okay, I'm going to plug our conference in September. We're going to have a great conference September 16th. It's an all-day conference, local here at the Holiday Inn over by the airport conference center. We've got great speakers lined up. This is going to be put out in the next couple of weeks for registration. Do it, come, because it's going to give you the opportunity to get some things that you would get if you were going to the international conference, but it's going to be local. And in the future, if you can afford to go to the international conference, I highly, highly recommend it. I don't know how many times I've been, at least 6 or 7. I know I've been with Matt before, at least a couple of times. And, you come away from that conference feeling so energized and feeling like you learned some new things, and you see that other people in the whole entire world, because it's an international conference, are doing the same thing you're doing. We all have our passions, and we all have things we're, trying to fund and raise money for. And you get so many good ideas, and you realize you're not just in this boat by yourself. There's other people in there with you. And so I highly recommend going if you can. I know they're doing virtual right now, but and that might be good as well, but it's really great to go in person when they start doing that again. But stay an active member of AFP. That's probably the best advice I can give you for your professional development.
Yeah. And Debbie, for the AFP in the Rock, which I'm super excited about, that September 16th, is that what you said?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's open to AFP members, but correct me if I'm wrong, that's also open to non-members. So you could bring your development office, or you could bring your development associate, or a board member, or anything like that. So it'd be great for anyone, not just AFP members.
Right. And if you register before the 31st of July, then there's an early bird registration price. So
very good. And that kind of goes back to, I'm not for sure who said it, as like, I think it was Brenda, to make sure you have professional development in your budget. I mean, that's another when you're looking at your department's budget. And this is kind of a weird day, since and day one on the job at the REF. I have big shoes to fill with Fran on here, and Jennifer Bell in this position. I'm super excited. But Brenda, the other day when we were talking, said that the average fundraiser changes jobs every 18 to 24 months. So a year and a half to 2 years. So what advice do y'all have for either, kind of sticking with where you are, when it's time to make a change? How do you know that? So Debbie, let's just kind of go back to you, and then we'll go to Matt and then Brenda.
Well, I'm probably not the best person to give advice on this, because, we started the development department, and it's kind of my baby. I just didn't want to ever leave it to anybody else to keep nurturing and growing it. And so I can see myself being here forever until I retire. But I know everybody's not in that boat. So I think you have to decide what's the most important thing to you. Are you going to move because it's a way to get promoted, because there's small shops and you can only go so far in a small shop, and to actually get promoted to a different level, you're going to have to move around. And I think that's one reason people in this profession move around. It's just because there's different levels of organizations. Some are way big, some are very tiny, and there's more opportunity, obviously, in bigger organizations. I do think the other thing you have to consider, you have to look at your life and where you are. Is flexibility important to you? Is, how much is required of you to do for your job? Are you wearing one hat? Are you wearing 10 hats? Do you have a family of 5 kids or 1 child, or, is it just you and your husband? Or are you single? So there's all kinds of things to consider. And I think you have to find what fits you. And sometimes I think that's why people move around, is because they just haven't found that right fit. And if you do find it, I would stay with it if you can, you know, because that's hard to find. It just kind of fell in my lap, and I feel very fortunate because of that. And it's worked out really, really well for me. But I do know people move around a lot, and there's different reasons for it. But did I answer?
Yeah. Oh,
Kind of just off the top of my head.
No, I love it. And the reason we kind of went to you first was you have been there 13 years, and that's not the average or nowhere near the standard. So I wanted to hear your viewpoint on that. And now, Matt, I want to turn to you because I know you did have a few different career changes, but you've been now where you are for a little while. So give us your advice on stay put, moving, you know, all this good stuff.
Yeah, I've been at the ranch for going on 9 years now. So it's a pretty long stay compared to the average for sure. Before that, I started out at Youth Home. I was there for 4.5 years. Then I moved over to the Arkansas Art Center, and I was there for 4.5 years again. So I'm not necessarily one to hop around, but yeah, with every one of those moves, it was because, I mean, there's just a couple of reasons. I mean, I either wanted to get paid more because I needed more to support our family, or two, just for a different position. We're a small state in Arkansas. We have small nonprofits for the most part. There are a few shops that are very large that do give you room to move around within, and that do have the resources to be able to pay fundraisers what they're worth. But otherwise, you're going to find yourself hopping from place to place. But for staying, I mean, I think there's so much benefit to staying. I found, you know, I've been here twice as long as I was in anywhere else. So you just learn so much more as far as the institution's concerned. You are able to develop those relationships so much deeper. So it's really in the organization's best interest to keep you. If you're doing your job well, you're going to you know, provide dividends on what you've developed as far as those relationships. And losing your institutional knowledge and losing your connection to those relationships, I mean, it will take the organization probably a couple of years at least to get back to the level of where you were when you left. So it's really in everybody's best interest because you're able to do more for the organization if you stay, and the organization's able to capitalize on that knowledge that's in your head. And hopefully you're also developing processes while, whether it's providing notes on donor records or just building processes to help the organization capture more of that information so that it's not just stored in your head, so that there is a backup plan if you're, you know, the hit by the bus plan. But yeah, I would encourage you, if you can, stick around and maybe take that to your supervisor or your board and say, look, here's some stats on what it's like when the organization retains good talent rather than turning over every 2 years. I think it could be a good way to either develop more in your department by creating another position, or even possibly get a raise. And AFP provides a study every year on compensation for nonprofit executives and basically any staff role at a nonprofit. So take part in that survey with AFP next time they put it out, and then you'll have that at your fingertips, so you can provide that to your boss as well. Say, look, this is what nonprofits in other areas are providing, and this is what for people in my position, this is what we're worth. So fight for yourself and for the organization, because it's better for both that you stay if you can.
Matt, thank you so much. And I love how I love how too, it all goes back to relationships. And that's kind of I think that's kind of the theme that we have had these past 45 minutes is kind of relationships. Debbie, before we go to Brenda.
I just want to say one quick thing, because I know Brenda needs to speak on this, but advocate for yourself. Sorry about that. This is my office, but I have my phone on silent. Advocate for yourself if you think you deserve more than you're getting, or you need a staff person, or you need supplies to do your job, advocate for yourself. Go and sit down with the people who are the decision makers and tell them that, and tell them what you need, because they'll listen. You may not always get it, but they'll listen.
Yeah.
You know, that's the way I've always done it.
Brenda, what about you? What are your thoughts on this?
Well, I agree with everything that Debbie and Matt have said. I'm going to add, I think, another component to this. Sometimes development people change jobs because the expectations are just unrealistic. I mean, if you've gotten into a position and things just keep building, and you find that the expectations are more than what you can handle, I mean, I know I left a job because of that one time. And you don't know that when you're considering the position as well. So sometimes that's just how it happens or how it works out. So when it happens, I think you know when you're either in over your head, or you don't have the support you need in order to reach those expectations. And then lastly, you'll know in your gut if it's just not a good fit. And sometimes it happens. The longest tenure I had with an organization was almost 10 years with Girl Scouts, and absolutely loved it. But like Matt mentioned, I changed careers or changed organizations just to get more experience, to make more money, and just to advance my career. So those are all acceptable and understandable reasons. But sometimes I just wanted to mention there are situations when things are just not working out, and believe me, it's not worth an ulcer. And if it's not working out and you don't have the support, you do need to make a change. You need to find something where you have a happy balance between your professional life and your personal life.
Gosh, Brenda, thank you so much. And I think that probably resonates with a lot of us in this profession as well. So thank you. In our last 10 minutes, this is kind of the question that I wanted to kind of end with the panel on, because this is the overarching question. It's like, what general advice do you want to share with us as fundraisers, as development professionals? And just it could be anything. So Brenda, I'm going to go back to you, and then we'll go to Debbie, and then to Matt.
Sure. Okay, Jennifer. Well, I wrote down 3 things that I wanted to mention. And to me, you've got to develop your fundraising plan. You've got to manage your time. But here are some tips that I would also add. Number 1 is the importance of being organized. You've got to develop a system whereby you've got tools in place that you rely on and use on a regular basis. Keep yourself organized and your team. Otherwise, you're going to feel overwhelmed, and I think you wind up spinning your wheels. So number 1 is organization. Number 2, and this is going to sound hokey, but I'm going to say it, keep the main thing the main thing. You are hired to raise money. You've got to figure out how to raise that money. Keep the main thing your focus. And then lastly is understand the big picture of your organization. Know its strengths and its weaknesses. Keep up with the moving parts. As a development person, you really need to have a link to your executive director. You need to know attitudes, what's happening that's going to impact the organization, because ultimately that's going to impact your donations and your community reputation. So you need to be part of the team and know the big picture for your organization. So those are my 3 tips.
Brenda, thank you so much. That's just great. I was taking notes as you were doing that. So let's go to Debbie, and then to Matt.
I just have one thing, because all 3 of those things were great that Brenda said, and we all need to be doing those. But I have found when things fall apart, there's usually one reason at the top of the list, and that reason is communication. We are a huge organization. We have 350 employees. We have 8 different locations. We serve 5 surrounding counties and 17 throughout the state. So it's huge. And I learned a valuable lesson this year because I was awarded a pretty large grant, which takes a lot of follow-up, right? Well, to get that information, when it's time for those quarterly reports coming up, I had to know who to get it from, what I was supposed to get, where to get the facts. You know, I wasn't as organized with that as I should have been. So I learned a valuable lesson, and I now know going forward how I would do that differently. So communication is a huge part of anything like that. And it's communicating with your people in charge, your CEO, your CFO, because there's financials involved, whoever are the decision makers at your organization, who's in charge of the different departments, who do you need information from, what kind of information are you going to communicate to the public, and you know, your employees, you want them to know to funnel pictures. You know, we do social media stuff, you know, we crave pictures, and Karina is always reaching out to our people, send us pictures. So that kind of thing, you just need open communication. They need to know who's responsible for what in your department, because if they're sending a picture, they need to know it goes to Karina, it doesn't go to me. She's the one doing all that posting. So you got to let them know who does what in your department and who needs what information. And that is gonna, I think, huge help is open communication.
Debbie, thank you so much. And Matt, we're going to turn to you.
Okay. I guess my piece of advice is everyone's different. Every fundraiser is different, and there's not really a one size fits all approach to fundraising. And while AFP offers a lot of best practices, and the people in our field offer a lot of best practices, you got to find what works for you and tweak those to fit your style and your strengths, and staff to your weaknesses. But you know, I've found a lot of success where I've been in direct mail, but direct mail is not for everybody. So just figure out what works for you, and where your skill set lies, and what you're interested in, and find ways to build that into your development program and your overall strategy. You'll find ways to build upon that success and the success of that, and engage your donors in ways, and hopefully develop them into deeper relationships with your organization through either, you know, planned gifts or major gifts, or hopefully just maybe even a volunteer who will connect a lot of other folks to your organization. So don't take for granted what you bring to the table. So that's my advice.
I couldn't get off mute. Sorry. Thank you so much, Matt. We did have one question, and I don't mean to rush you, but so whoever wants to respond can respond for the panel. It's from Meredith Hale. And happy work anniversary, Meredith. That's exciting. A year of being director of development and marketing, 3 years this summer. Congratulations. So she has a question of, how do you respond to internal funding requests that aren't necessarily at the level to go out and look for grants and funding sources? How do you handle requests that just need to be made regardless of funding? And that question's in the chat too, if I boggled that up.
I have one thing I'll respond to that quickly. Is I had an issue with that because we are so big, and we were always getting, we need this, or you know, whatever was going on. So I came up with a request for almost like an RFP. So if they have a request, and I can stick that document, I can't do it off this computer, and Karina won't know where to find it, but I will send that to you, Jennifer, if you want to send it out. But it's basically, and it can apply to a grant as well. If there's a grant available for it, then you know what they're wanting and who's going to be responsible for implementing what they're asking for, and the people involved and all that. But it's a great little sheet that you can, it's about 3 or 4 sheets that you can send out, and you can say, if you have something you need, then fill this out, and based on priority or what's available, we'll try to do our best to help you. But that's how I've handled that.
Yeah.
We are having a request for that sheet, Debbie. So send that to me and I'll get it sent out. Matt.
Yeah, I try to keep a wish list for our organization. So, and I try to reach out to program staff once a year or so, and just say, hey, thinking ahead for this year, what are some things that you need? and just try to develop a wish list so that when funding opportunities arise, it's something that I can go back to and fall back on and say, okay, this, this amount meets about that size of gift that this donor is considering, or identify a grant that that could potentially fund that. So I just try to keep that wish list up to date.
Great. Brenda, do you have anything to add?
Well, I'll jump on what Matt just said. Having the wish list really helps you as a staff person, especially with grants. When I sit down with a new client, I ask them, what is it that you have to have and what is it that you want to have? And they prioritize the needs, but that gives me information when I start researching to look for funding opportunities. If I know what they're looking for, that helps me so much than having to go back and tell them I found this and then going through the back door. So being, I guess, upfront with your wish list can save everybody time. And you never know what funders you're going to come across, because that's our world.
So y'all, thank you so much. Again, let's give, I'm going to have two big thank yous. First to our panel, Matt, Debbie, Brenda, thank you so much for being leaders in our profession, giving us your time and your expertise. We so appreciate you. The second, I want to say a big shout out to Caitlin for arranging this. Thank you, Caitlin, for everything you're doing in education. And last but not least, the third one, I want us all to give a big round of applause to two ladies on here. I think they're on the same screen. Amy Harkins, our chapter administrator, and Christine Grunwald, our president. They have kept this going for this past 15 months, and you are very appreciated for AFP Arkansas chapter. So thank you so much. And then that's all I have. So Caitlin, I'll turn it back to you.
I just quickly want to thank y'all so much for being here. Thank you, Jennifer, Debbie, Brenda, Matt, for your time and dedication to our chapter. That was fantastic. I took a lot of notes. It's just wonderful to hear from you all and your experience. I really appreciate it. Also hope that you all will keep an eye out and register for our upcoming educational session. I believe it is on May 20th, that morning at 9 a.m. We're going to be talking about generational giving, which is really exciting, going to help us as we work toward cultivating donors from different generations and making sure that we're meeting them where they're at. So thank you all again for everything. And I hope that everybody has a fantastic rest of the day and hope everybody is able to get out and enjoy this beautiful weather. So thank y'all so much and have a good afternoon.